The lines between work and life have become increasingly blurred. And you would
Mhm.
agree about that, Stephen, especially for the millions of us who have embraced remote work. While the flexibility and autonomy are fantastic, the reality of truly disconnecting can feel like a distant dream.
Mhm.
Are we always reachable? Are our laptops perpetually open? Can we actually switch off? There is a lot of data that points to the picture of this struggle. Studies have shown a significant rise in burnout and stress among remote workers. For
Mhm.
instance, a recent survey indicated that over 40% of remote employees report working longer hours than they did in the office.
Mhm.
And there is another study highlighting that nearly 30% find it difficult to switch off from work in the evenings. Wow. These numbers underscore a critical challenge. The very environment that offers us freedom can also trap us in a cycle of overwork, when we don't want it. To help us navigate this complex issue of remote work overload and the elusive art of disconnecting, I'm thrilled to welcome a seasoned expert to the show today. Stephen Puri brings a wealth of experience in understanding human behavior and performance, particularly within dynamic and demanding environments. The guy has been doing a little bit of kind of decades inside of the filming industry. But he's also the founder of the Sukha Company. Steven is dedicated to helping individuals find their good place by fostering focus,
Mhm.
productivity, and well-being in the modern work landscape using technology. My dear, how could you move from this crazy filming industry where nobody sleeps into something where you want a little bit of more calm and balance in your life? Tell me more about that story.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you this for everyone listening. The thing about this particular episode that'll be interesting is I was a senior executive at a couple of studios, and I also founded tech companies. And I have seen between the two worlds, I've seen how there are lessons to go from one to the other. And that's what I share now. So if you want to hear some of these principles that you hear about how to have work-life balance, how to get into a flow state, how to get your work done earlier, but I have a lot of examples to illustrate them that are kind of going between cross-pollinating these worlds. So that's really what I want to share. So to answer your question, how the heck did I go from this to that, right? So I'm going to tell you, I would like to say that there is some grand design that centuries, people have been writing books that I followed. Okay. No, I have been very lucky. I think sometimes when I've gotten luck, I've worked hard to make the most of it. But there have been a number of things where something fell in my lap and was like, let's pursue this. I will give you an example. I was born the son of two engineers at IBM, right? So mom was a software engineer, dad was a hardware engineer. Dad designed a logic chip, CPUs, basically, right? So when I was really little, I was a code monkey. Like it was just natural. Like mom, would go to code and I'd be like, Mom, what are you doing? And she let me have, like little coding assignments like that. So it was very natural. If your mom's a figure skater, you probably know how to ice skate, right? So I did that. And I ended up winning a Watson scholarship from IBM, which means that they guarantee you a job. So when I went to school in Los Angeles, I went to USC in LA. I made money by working at IBM, and it was fun to have that world, but also being in LA. Now, what's funny is USC has a fantastic cinema school. So a bunch of my friends in my dorm and in my apartment later, they were aspiring writers, aspiring filmmakers, because you're in LA, it's the film capital of the globe, right? I was in LA when film went digital. And when those two things overlapped, I happened to sit right at the middle of that where I knew how to speak to an engineer. And I also understood how to speak to a creative person because a lot of my friends were filmmakers, right? Young filmmakers, right? Tiny, tiny. And my career took off. I ended up producing computer generated images for movies, for TV shows. We won the Academy Award for Independence Day. I produced the digital effects for Independence Day, which was super cool. And I got very lucky because the movie industry was just discovering computers in a certain way, right? And so I did about 14 films. I got to work with Cameron, Fincher, Spielberg, Katzenberg, Woody Allen, Jim Jarmusch, Mike Nichols, like Roland Emmerich, all these guys, right? So I set up when we did Independence Day, after that, I had become pretty friends with the director and producer, nice guys, Roland and Dean. So we started a company together just to do computer generated images, right?
Mm.
Luckily, sold that. Das Werk, a big German media conglomerate, sort of like Liberty Media of Germany. They came in, bought us. I was like 27, 28 at the time, and did not realize, how hard selling a company is. And I was like, oh, this is so great. We started a company, we sold it. It was like a 6x multiple. I was like, oh, these things, people make that out to be so hard. Now I know that they are hard. I didn't know that, right? So that was sort of my transition from being like a programmer, like software engineer, into film, where I got this taste of like meeting all these directors because they needed someone who had my skill set.
Mm.
And then I thought, you know what? I want to get into film with both feet. I'm going to leave the whole engineering thing behind. I want to see, can I get movies made, right? Which is a very different skill. Like there's a bifurcation in film about above the line and below the line. Yeah. Above the line means like the creatives. So it is the writer, the actor, the director, but below the line are all the technicians. So the cinematographer, the costumer, the production designer, location scout, all the grips. So I was technically below the line. I was one of the technicians helping to make the movie, right? And I was like, I wonder if I could be a producer, right? I wonder if I could be a studio chairman. So I went on this mission, started my late, 20s. And I was like, okay, I need to work my way up. So again, I had made some friends along the way, got some introductions, worked hard, worked my way up. Over on the DreamWorks slot, I ended up an executive vice president there. At Fox, I was a vice president. So I hit a moment at Fox where I was the executive running the Die Hard franchise and the Wolverine franchise and some of these other things that I had grown up on. Like I remember seeing the first Die Hard when I was little. I was like, oh, that was amazing, right? And here I was like the idiot running Die Hard 5. And as much as that sounds really cool, and it'd take me like 10 plus years to get there, it was, once you're inside the factory, you realize it's all kind of soap. You're making a different soap. You know what spring soap smells like. You know what Christmas soap smells like. You know how to market them, right? But it's not quite as glamorous as you think from the outside, right? You're just making movies, and it's a grind. So I was like, you know what? I know I'm going to have a child someday. I really like to be proud of what I do, as opposed to like, hey kids, daddy made Die Hard 11,
Kids love that, by the way. They're proud of it.
Sometimes, I want to do something that maybe affect the world a little bit more. So I thought, what's the one other thing I need to do? I know how to do, right? Now I know how to make movies. What's the other thing I know how to do, which is technology? So I was like, I'm going to go start a tech company. I'm going to leave this, which a lot of my friends were shocked. They're like, why would you leave being a senior executive of a studio to go do some startup and raise a couple $1 million? You're working on $150 million movies that your studio bankrolls. You're going to go try and like raise money for investors, 100,000, 200,000 at a time. I was like, yeah. So I did 2 startups, hard, failed at both, was just humbled and embarrassed. And I felt shame. I felt like, wow, this is such a public failure for all my friends who were like, oh, Puri left film. He's going to go do technology. And I was like, oh man. And I think I left film a little too arrogant. One of my big mistakes was not listening enough to the advice of others and to members. I had a thought of like, I have a vision for what this should be. Ultimately, other companies did it better. Like Snapchat did pretty much what my first tech company was doing. They did it with a better user experience. Credit to them. They also had a huge user base, so they could scale it, roll it out. It was fantastic. Good for them. So I did that, and it was really hard. And I just felt embarrassed. I was like, wow, what do I do? And in doing those 2 companies, the thing that I did do that I think was smart is at the end of each, while I was sort of licking my wounds and wallowing in self-pity, let's not kid ourselves, right? I did sit in this one chair that I have, and with a pad of paper, not a laptop, not a phone, but like a pad of paper, old school, on a pencil, I wrote down to myself, what did I do wrong? Well, it was still fresh in my mind. Like, here's it. Because I know like in a month and 6 months and a year, I'll kind of forget the pain of this. I was like, what would I do differently, right? And I keep those pieces of paper. They keep me humble-ish. Maybe I'm not humble, but I aspire to be. Right? I'm the most modest person I know. Uh, so
Very humble to say.
exactly right. So those two pieces of paper of like, hey man, here's stuff that you seem to make these mistakes, Stephen, and you need to remind yourself, like, how do you not keep repeating that pattern? One of the things that really stood out for me is the two companies that I had started were both remote, entirely remote, no office. The benefits were absolutely true. You could hire talent globally. Oh my God, there's this amazing designer in Montreal. I can hire her. She doesn't need to live driving distance from my office in West Hollywood, right? You could get a great engineer in Spain, which I did. No commute time. I don't have to sit in LA traffic driving somewhere. None of my teammates need to drive somewhere and sit there and try and get annoyed. We can actually do something, right? So all the benefits were there. But I recognize there are some real challenges. And the company that I'm doing now is really the benefit of the things I noticed were really hard about working hybrid or working remote.
Mm.
I wanted to make something beautiful and something that said, what were the real problems that I had? I mean, example, now that I've spoken to hundreds of members of my community, our platform, because remember, lesson number one was listen to people, right? So now I
Mm.
spend a lot of time. Like, I mean, I've spoken to hundreds of members within our large community. And one of them is the cold start problem in the morning, where sometimes people talk about procrastination. Like if they're working remote, working hybrid, it's like, oh, well, I'll just throw in a load of laundry. I'll come right back. Oh, I'll go do the dishes from last night. And I'll scroll, or I need to return my emails before I do this thing, right?
Mm.
And that procrastination thing, if you dig down deeper into it, it often is just about a feeling of overwhelm. It's sometimes looking at your task list and saying, there are too many things on this. I don't even know where to begin. Or the thing you have to begin with just seems too big to begin with. These are conquerable problems. And that is largely why I built the company that I built, to say, hey, you have a smart assistant who says, you know what, let's just pick these three things. They seem the most important. Three is not overwhelming. Let's just do these. If you do these today, that'll be a win. Or, this first task you have called write the book, little too big for today. How about just outline chapter one? How about we just make that a goal in 45 minutes? So to break those things down. So that's really where I found my place to contribute. That's what I'm doing the past 6 years, is just helping people to find ways to like have work-life balance and also just do their best work. It's nice to feel proud of what you did, especially if you didn't have to stay up until 2 a.m. doing it.
Mm. I love the fact that you have mentioned this little story that is very difficult to adopt by human beings is to believe that if you do small task every time, um, that helps. In fact, that helps you to reach faster sometimes and with more chances of success your personal goals.
Yeah.
Um, and this is based on some researcher. For instance, in my case, I remember I have read this guy called B.J. Fox. Uh,
Yep.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
the inspiration to Atomic Habits and all the stuff, huh,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
I remember that, and it works. I can tell
Yeah.
you, it works.
Yes.
At the moment I decided to remove these limitations that I have to do things with intensity, slap myself to death if I don't succeed, then my life became better and I'm succeeding to do my shit, but I have to do it in a more sequential way, consistently, and in small pieces, not to break my mindset in the morning, right?
I am glad that you have the energy you have, because I've been listening. I've been actually watching your videos, and sometimes I have to tone myself down because I get too enthusiastic. But with you, I think I seem like the calm one. I'm like the quiet guy in the corner. So let me pick up on what you're saying, because I will tell you this: in developing what I was developing, of course, you want to go, like you said, you want to go read the people who've thought about this. Billions of people have had to work in history, right? A lot of smart people have written these books. So when you read Flow by Csikszentmihalyi, when you read, Clear and Newport and, Holiday and all these guys, they've written really smart stuff. I don't feel the need to be like, oh, let me come up with my new way of like trying to craft productivity. Rather, and I don't know if you found this to be true, is when you read the top dozen books, ones that people say this was the most valuable thing that helped me work,
Mm,
the principles in those all boil down to kind of the same things. And they have their own vocabulary, they
mm.
have their own lexicon. They sell you their book for $24.95, which has, this name for the method and this acronym for the, which is awesome. Other books do their thing, support them, right? But I'll tell you this, what I do is I said, here are the common principles. How do I match these up with the most common problems that people have,
Mm.
including me? And that's what I build. Just saying, here are the problems, here are the principles. It seems like hundreds of thousands of people agree with.
Mm.
How do I put this all in one beautiful place for people? So,
And you're damn right, in fact. The problem is not about the quantity of knowledge that we have in order to stop procrastinating or do reach our goals. It is about the practice itself. Because
yeah,
sometimes it's not enough just to read the bloody Atomic Habits. It is about how do I make it happen? Now you finish and you have understood even the principles,
yeah,
but you don't do shit about it.
yeah,
And you need something that facilitates this transition about compliance with what you wanted to have, what you put in your head. I want to reach that, but there is no system.
yes, there's no system. And here's the thing is I have you one of the biggest things is a friend of mine wanted me to start a to-do app with him. And I said, I have tried so many to-do apps, thought they were amazing for a month, and ended up abandoning them when there's full of tasks that I'm not going to do and just annoying. I was like, I don't actually have a solution to that. Like if I had a brilliant idea going, this is how you create the actual to-do list that you'll keep using, I would do that, right? Rather, what I thought was this. I do have an idea how we can make an app that's more helpful to get your work done, that actually assists you in getting done your work. And I'll tell you a funny story. So, Laura, my wife, who at the time was my fiance, when I started this, we were developing this. We had a small community, and we're kind of getting it half right, sort of thing, right? But some people were digging what we were doing, and I wanted to name my company. So Laura and I had gotten married, and we were going on our honeymoon in Bali, right? And very lucky that we could, go away and do this thing. I very much appreciate the life we have. So we're there. And you probably know this is the funny thing is all day long, every day when you run a business, people ask you questions. What should we do? How should we do this client? Can we buy this stapler? Can you approve this chart? Like all day long. So for those 10 days, everyone I worked with was like, don't bother him. He's on his honeymoon. Just like, shh. Right. So it was super quiet. And I said this to Laura, I thought, this might be a beautiful moment for me to find the right name for this company, a name that expresses this. And I said to her, I know that I'm inside the bubble. Like what I'm creating to help you get your work done, help you feel good. Da, da, da. I know that I'm inside it, and it's hard to see yourself when you're inside it. Would you mind if I spoke to a couple of like our power members just for 5-10 minutes and ask them like, what's your favorite thing about what we do? Because I think if that goes my unconscious mind over the course of 10 days, something might bubble up creatively. Something might come out of there and be like, oh, no, no. So Laura, who's amazing, was just like, yeah, sure, take a look. I'll go to the pool. So, I'll look up people. And I'll tell you, this was one of the most impactful things that happened in my entire development of this is there was one member that I called, this guy who shall remain nameless, but man, I talk to this guy still in our DMs. And I talked to him for like 8 minutes. I said, listen, all I want is 10 minutes of your time, right? So for 8 minutes, I asked stupid questions. What's your favorite feature? Do you like the music? We have, 1,000 hours of scientifically designed original music, 60 to 90 beats per minute, non-vocal. These key signatures are supposed to help you. Half of it's binaural if you like the whole thing. Do you like our smart assistant? Do you like our timers and the Pomodoro? Right. So at the end of like 8 minutes, I was going into the wrap up going, hey, it was so nice. Thank you for taking the time chatting with me. And he said, Stephen, listen, I don't think you asked the right question. Okay. Well, what's the right question? He said, you should ask me, why do I pay you? Okay. That's maybe bolder than I would have been. I would love to know, why do you pay me? And he said, at 3 o'clock, I can be playing with my kids, or at 6 o'clock, I can say, where the hell did they go? So the difference is, did I open Sukha in the morning? I pay you so at 3 o'clock, I can be with my kids. And I was like, wow. So I went to dinner with Laura. I was like, oh my God, one guy today had this like insight into what we do. Da, da, da. And Laura thought about it. She was very quiet. And then we came back to the room after dinner and, sort of brushed her teeth and stuff. And she looked at me and she said, I think you've been so concentrating on like these names that are around like, focus app 14 and like productivity booster 12, like garbage, awful names. I hated, she hated it. It was just like, it's bad. And she said, I think what he told you is the thing that you actually are trying to do is help people be happy. And all these tools that you build are just the path that you walk on. They're not the goal. The goal is happiness. And Laura and I met in yoga. And as you know, there are a lot of Sanskrit words and concepts. Prana, Sukha is one of them. Sukha means like the happiness you feel when you're self-fulfilled, when you're doing the thing that you're really good at it, and you feel good. You're in your lane and you're like, this is what I'm meant to do. She said, I think that actually is closer to what you're doing. And I named the company the Happiness Company, which is the Sukha Company.
That's an amazing story. Now,
Thanks to the people I work with. You notice I was not the smart one in the story. It's Laura and our member who's still in there right now working.
uh, you have going, and I mentioned it already several times that you have got like a crazy life with this in this filming industry, and being a founder doesn't allow you to switch off.
True.
What
Yep.
have you learned out of your experience about the obstacles that prevent people working remotely to
Ooh, really
prevent?
good question. Okay, one of the biggest practices that I found, and you as a leader can lead with this, or you as an individual contributor can sort of enforce this from your point of view, which is to actually do the thing. If you, I'm sorry, let me say this. If you do knowledge work, like if you are a salesperson, if you're a BD and you're on Zooms all day long, you're just on Zooms all day long. It's just life, right?
Mm,
We don't help salespeople. Like what we do is not built for that. What we do is really people who are hybrid or at home, and they're often engineers, designers, writers. You have a couple of hours of knowledge work to do. Like you have to think and create something, right? So you're a graphic designer or you're a software engineer, that sort of thing. So this is what I've noticed is the leaders that say, you know what? I want us as a team to have this sort of sacred time when everyone gets to do their deep work in the day. For most people, including myself, it's the morning when your thoughts are the clearest.
yeah.
Let's agree, no meetings, no stand-ups, no stupid things that interrupt your flow. Because as many people have written, like Cal Newport has a great blog post about the 22 minutes, many people have written about, you need almost half an hour to get into that flow state where the world disappears. You bang out your work and you look up and it's noon and you're like, I am almost done for the day. Like that thing. So as a leader, you can create a culture. You say, hey guys, you know what? Tell it from 9 to 11 every morning or 9 to noon, we're just going to have focus time. We're not going to bug each other, Or as an individual contributor, you can say, hey, if you want the best work out of me, please don't book meetings. Like I'm going to block my calendar in this time. And this is where I'm going to do the really meaningful work. I'm going to move our code base forward. I'm going to do the designs we need for the client. I'm going to write my daily blog post. I'm going to write the outline of the chat. We have a number of book authors that are in our platform because they do that in the morning. The kids are gone, and they just spend a couple hours going, I'm going to write the next chapter, or I'm going to do the thing. So that was a really important one for me of helping you to get at the end of the day to a place of like, feel great. This is a good place. By the way, Sukha, if you actually deconstruct it in Sanskrit, Sukha means good place.
Oh.
The feeling you are when you are in a good place. And that's where I want people to be at the end of the day. More than anything else, even if they hate the music, they hate the coach, they hate the thing, is they just want to go, man, I feel great. Like, let me go. And when you have that feeling, I think it affects every part of your life because you exude that energy and it builds on itself.
Now that you have mentioned good place and happiness.
Mhm.
In fact, happiness is not like a goal as such, is not a direction, a location where we should be. It's about being in line with what we
Yeah,
feel in a good place when we have accepted that I'm satisfied with what I'm doing, like talking
right.
even at 5 o'clock in after 10 hours of work. Yeah.
Yeah, you're sitting in a place. So in yoga, there is a pose, there's an asana that is called Sukhasana, which is Sukha pose, and it is you sitting cross-legged. It is not some crazy balancing thing with your arms out and like one leg in the air. Da, da, da. It is sitting cross-legged in a seat where you feel like composed, at ease. You feel in a good place, and I love that.
Stephen, you have mentioned the word flow.
Yeah,
And let me tell you that even 7 years ago, when somebody was talking about flow, I was giving like the most stupid definition possible because I didn't know shit about the work of, you have mentioned Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and I didn't know what it meant. I thought that it was just a little bit of focus, just that's
should we
it.
talk about that?
You know what? I want that because I think that people deserves to know, understand the meaning of that is not just about doing something that enjoying. No, no, it goes beyond in terms of productivity, but and it's hard to
Yes,
define. And for that, you need a little bit of this background of Mihaly, Chiche
she
Mihaly.
said be high. Yeah, yeah. So let's talk. You want to talk about that?
No, I want to ask
I'll talk
you.
about that. Right.
Yeah,
I'll talk about that.
yeah,
Right.
because people has a hard time to know how to implement it. They think it is a concept like talking about, I don't know, chakras, which by the way, I'm not too familiar, neither I do believe so much about
Yeah, yeah.
chakras.
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about this. And again, the main reason you and I are talking is that hopefully this benefits someone listening can take something away and go, "Oh man, you made my life a little better.
Yeah.
Thank you." Okay, so the concept that you're bringing up to just set the table is flow states,
Mm,
and this is something that even if you don't use that word, even if you don't make reference to the books written on this, you probably have heard about this. Very high performers often have this thing that they've said about like, well, sir, how do you do that amazing thing? Well, this is how I do it. For example, it's a famous quote about Michael Jordan where he talks about it's just him and the ball. Like there are moments in the game, there are no
mm,
spectators, there's no
yeah.
scoreboard, there's no opponent. It is just him and the ball, and he's just in a state of flow. There's nothing else exists, right? Or you talk about like Picasso has a great quote about how some nights he would just stay up all night. He forgot to go to the bathroom. He forgot to eat, But in the morning, he's like, "Oh, and by the way, Guernica, what do you think? Do you like it?" It's like, and you get into that weird thing. I've experienced that. I think the first time I experienced it was on a plane where there was no Wi-Fi, there was no incoming emails, Slack messages, and I pulled up my laptop and I had something to write. And I remember looking up and I was going, "We're landing," but it was like 5 minutes. We just took off. Like, how are we landing now, right? And it was like a flight from, I think, Austin to New York or something. So it was like 2 to 3 hour flight. And it seemed like I'd missed the flight. But that thing, and you're right, the seminal work on this, if anyone wants to read it, they don't have to read it, but if they want to. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi wrote this book called Flow, and he basically put a name to this. And his idea was this: he said, in talking with all these great, creators and athletes and stuff about this zone they go into, which some people call it the zone.
Mm,
He said, it's almost like they're describing they get into a place where the river carries them forward. Like it's your momentum is greater than just yourself. And for that reason, he said, let's call this a flow state. It's like you're on the river of thought, of consciousness, and it carries you forward as you move, right? I
mm,
thought that was a beautiful metaphor. And now, all the smart people have written about this. So one of the things that he started to outline, and this I hope is very helpful for people, as well as some people have done more research on, are okay, so how do you get into a flow state? Like, are there things that you can do? Right. And he outlined some of them. For example, he said, the task you need to do needs to be achievable. Like I was joking at the beginning of this saying, like, if your first task of the day is write my book, you're going to be frustrated. You're not going to be in the flow. That's not achievable, right? But if it is like outline chapter one or do my character Bible or something like that, right? Or if
mm,
you're an engineer, you're not like write the app, but you're like, you know what? let's come up with a framework and let's, establish the repo or something. Okay? So one of those things is just find something that's achievable. Second thing, it has to be something where your skill set applies to it. So even though it might be achievable to throw a basketball through a hoop, if you were to give that to Picasso, it would not be a task where he could get into flow. Same thing if you give Michael Jordan a paintbrush, I think he would not suddenly be like in a state of flow creating, the next Mona Lisa or something. So it has to be that match of like skills to the task. So that's why Jordan can be in flow on a basketball court with incredibly talented people trying to stop him from doing anything valuable, right? It's also something where there are, again, there's a lot of research in this now. You mentioned music. There's a lot of research around certain kinds of music generally help people. And there are absolutely outliers. Like we have people in our platform that listen to, rap and like heavy metal and things that don't seem traditionally get into flow, but for them, it stimulates them the right way. For most people, it's non-vocal music, so you're not singing along with it. It's 60 to 90 beats per minute. It's certain key signatures. There's some stimulations that people find with binaural beats that help them get creative, like around 40 hertz, 36 to 40 hertz difference. People say it makes them feel more creative, things like that. So there are a number of things you can do in terms of achievable tasks that you have something you believe are meaningful. That's another one. You have to believe that ultimately, if you do this thing, that it's not like a waste of your time, So anyway, yeah. So flow states are that beautiful thing where you look up, you go, I didn't even realize time went by. I did intense work. This is amazing. I feel great. How do I do that again? And essentially what we build is a flow state app to help you get to that place. So for 2 or 3 hours a day, you can do like 6 hours of work.
But how can you train yourself, your brain, to go into this zone or flow? Is there any recommendation that you would give? Imagine this guy who is a
Yeah.
programmer working for a big company, somewhere sitting in like me in a village of 500 people, and we get distracted. Where we have wife telling us stuff. There is my mobile ringing, emails and all that stuff. How can I control that?
Is a fantastic question. So you're right. You brought up a couple times in there about distractions, right?
Mm.
Phones ringing or Slacks coming in or things like that. So it is true. In order to do anything great, you have to want to do that, right?
Yeah.
So I've spoken to leaders, like we have entire teams that use our app together as a team in a private group. And I've spoken to some of the team leaders, and they often have like that person or those couple of people. They're like, I just can't inspire them. I can't find a way to get them to do something great. And that is a hiring problem. Like there is no, sometimes you just can't lead someone that doesn't want to be led. So let's focus on the people who actually want to look up at 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock and say, wow, this feels amazing, right? So if you are dedicated to that, if you say, I want to have a life where I feel happy in the afternoons and I don't want to have any more days where at 6 o'clock, I'm like, where the fuck did the day go? Right. Then what you can do is in the morning, set yourself up for that, which means a great practice. Choose your 3 things, and like, for example, when you open Sukha, your assistant helps you to choose 3 things. And that is all you can put in your bucket for the day. There is no space for anything else. So it really forces you to go, what can I get done? I can do 3 things. And it helps you to say when you get those done, feeling like, boom, like that's a feeling of achievement, right? As opposed to I have 17 things to do. I did 3 or 4 and I feel miserable, right? It's terrible, terrible feeling. So there's that. And there's also, for example, we built this into our platform. When you start, you can connect your Slack. So while you're in a session and you're hearing beautiful music and your assistant is helping you do work, anyone who Slacks you gets an away message. They're like, oh, Steven's in a focus session. So they know they're not going to hear from Steven for 2 or 3 hours. He's working. And it stops me from getting that continual thing of like, oh, well, I should just respond to them. I should just, but they're waiting for a response, right? So you can do things like that. You can also lock your phone in our platform where it's just like, it stops you from picking it up. Because I'll tell you, one of my biggest problems, the days that I end up frustrated at the end of the day are usually the days, and this is, I'm sorry about this, when I open TikTok. TikTok, I find to be so, the user experience is so fantastic. And it's just the dopamine hit. It is hard. I'll pick it up for 2 minutes, look up, 25 minutes went by because it's just like, oh, that's an interesting video. Oh, there's another interesting video. And it knows me so well, even like weird science stuff. It's like he loves knowing about rocket propulsion and it will choose that. And I'm just like, well, I'll just watch this one video, right? Terrible, terrible. So I use this now where I start my session. There's a little QR code on screen. I shoot it with my phone, put it down. And when I pick up my phone, my assistant is like, Steven, do you really need to be on your phone? I'm like, no, I don't. Let me put that back down. So you have to kind of want it, you know, to like to get there. But there are tools that when you want it, hopefully reinforce this as the habits. I mean, obviously, James and a lot of people have spoken about habits, but as you build that muscle and you build that habit of like, hey, you know what? I like being done at 3 instead of being done at 6. So I just have to do this at 9 a.m. so I get there.
I find that there is a correlation between the state of satisfaction about your life, which leads to happiness,
Mm-hmm.
and control. When you feel that you don't control your life or what you have chosen to do the day, it
Yeah.
is painful. And
So true. Yes.
I
Yep.
go back to the times when I was working in corporate. I felt maybe the number of hours that I was working was maybe a little bit less than what I'm doing now. But as I'm the one picking up what is the priority now today, I feel better. I go to bed and I sleep. Before that, I was sleeping 4 hours when I was in the
Oh,
corporate
that's
world.
terrible for your health.
But of course, and it was terrible for the ending of my corporate life. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that this little thing, I think not so many people notice that when you feel that you are not in control of your time or your life,
Yeah.
things are heavier. So you feel more tired, you feel more stress,
Yep. Can I
and
pick up on that?
yeah,
The word you used about feeling control, I think that is really important. And there are two things that I've learned in running these last 3 companies, right? They're both about control.
hmm,
One thing I think is very helpful to understand, and this is the work anywhere mentality, which is work is what you do, it's not where you do it.
yeah,
So if there are activities that are best to do in an office together around a whiteboard, absolutely do it. It's not like going to the office is the worst thing in the world. It's
hmm,
that there are activities when that is a fantastic, I'll say creatively, like I have never been on a Zoom or a G Meet or a, Teams thing where I have felt the same creative inspiration, like working out with you, like what should happen next in the story or how should the user interface work, as much as I have standing with you, sitting with you, being with you in a room and having that vibe. You're like, I know in the third act when Ivan fights the dragon, this is what he should do. So it's like, if you think about Yvonne in real life and the vibe you have, there's something about that, right? So as soon as you give people control to say, I trust you're going to choose where you need to be. So it's
hmm.
work anyway. It's not about work is where you are. Work is what you do. That I think is a really big part of control. And then people can rise up and say, like, actually, Tuesday we should get together in the office. Whereas like Wednesday through Friday, I'm home writing or I'm coding or whatever. Like it's fine, dude. I'll get it all done. Right. And the other part of that is that work, if it's goal oriented, hey guys, we as a team want to ship our app. We want to get our website revised. We want to get our book published by Friday. That's very different than work is how many hours you work.
Hmm.
And again, it's control. The same way the first one is, I want to let you control where you are and you determine what's best. You have control over where. It's here, you have control over how. It's like, it's about the work getting done. Get it done however you want. If you want to get it done in 3 hours, use a great productivity tool and get it in 3. You want to get it in 6 hours. I don't care. I want you to have the control to figure it out because it's not about the time you spend. It's about, did we ship that thing? And it's awesome.
Hmm. One thing that I want to highlight is just a small parenthesis, Stephen. Stephen, when you are entrepreneur, it's not that you don't have a boss, by the way, because often we have somebody who has put some money in your company,
Yeah.
VCs or some guy, he's kind of your boss sometimes, and
Yeah,
that brings you
sure.
pressure also because you are
Yeah.
committing about certain results. So it's don't let's don't idealize the fact of being entrepreneur because we always have a boss. My
Yeah.
God, isn't it incredible?
Yeah, we do. And even like you said, before you raise, you're your own boss. Like if there's someone that's going to be let down, it's you. And that can drive you more than just investor pressure. It's like, I have to make this happen.
Mm. Now, what about work-life balance? So, do you have any practical strategies to make that remote workers have a healthier integration, or for some separation between work and personal life?
Yes. This is one that I found to be very true myself. And I was not adhering to this when I started this company, which is the concept of commuting to your desk, even if your desk is in your home.
Mm.
And it is that there is an area where you associate that area with a certain kind of activity. So it's meaning not bringing your laptop to bed, not sitting on the sofa where the TV is and working on your laptop on the sofa, but it's saying, I'm going to commute to my workplace, which in my house is an upstairs bedroom. That's my office, right? And it's like, I commute here, I work here. This is set up for me. And then when I go elsewhere in my house, it is home, right? And that distinction, as silly and rudimentary as it sounds, is a very important one. So your whole home does not become well, I should be working at the kitchen table. I should be working while I'm cooking. I should, no, it's like go downstairs, cook, make lunch, do whatever, go for a walk. Like for example, one of the things we do in Sukha is there's a Pomodoro timer. You can adjust it, but it tells you after 25 minutes or 55 minutes, hey man, you'll get points if you go for a walk or go drink a glass of water. Or here's a stretching exercise. You want to do a 2-minute stretching exercise? Simple things that allow you to have that little distance and say, hey, you know what? At the end of the day, close your laptop. You're good. You're not up all night. But you're right. It is very easy once you blur the lines of I'm working in my house for it to become I'm working throughout my house. And that I think you have to draw a line.
Mm. And I acknowledge that I do that mistake very often because I use almost all of the rooms
See?
in my house.
I'm glad we both learned something today. That is my gift to you. Do that. I'm going to check on you in a week.
And then you made me think that about just taking a break and drinking a glass of water. I live in a small town where a lot of people think that drinking water is sinful, so they drink wine.
Oh, wow. Okay. Sinful. What kind of water do you drink? Maybe I'd like to try this.
So I think we have been influenced by the French culture because I live like 20 minutes away to the border with France. Uh,
Yeah.
so we have been influenced by these people who drink a lot, by
These
the way.
people, I'm telling you. Yeah.
Um, in your work, uh, current
Hmm?
work, in fact, what are the one or two non-negotiable practices that you have implemented to ensure that in particular, can
Hmm?
disconnect effectively when working remotely? Is there anything that you have said, this is the red line, this I will never do?
Well, I'll tell you, when you run a small company, there is a flexibility where sometimes you're right. It's like, oh man, we shipped that update to the app, and
Yeah.
I know something's wrong. My wife works for a very large US bank. She's a head of product for a portion of what they do. And that happened to them this weekend. I mean, everyone jokes about bankers' hours, right? Come in at 8:30, leave at 4:30, you're done. So it is a bank. And yeah, they had a problem with an app that they shipped. And tell you, Sunday at 7 a.m., she was on with like a, the head of the bank. It was a big deal. So it happened. You have to be flexible. I can't tell you that I have a golden rule, but I have the things we talked about, which are focus in the morning, do calls and stuff and Zooms in the afternoon, do meetings in the afternoon, and separate the space in my house. So it's like when I'm upstairs in my office, I'm working, things like that. And I think also here maybe an interesting thing for your audience, which is this is something I learned in film that has helped me a lot creatively. And when I was maybe like 19 or 20, I was a senior at USC, and I started working at this ad agency that did trailers for movies. Right. So I
Yeah.
was making some money on the side doing this thing. And two guys ran this company, really smart guys. One of them is a good friend of mine to this day. Um, so I was at this place where the studios would send you their movies that were going to come out later in the year. We would essentially write the trailers, produce the trailers, and then, give them back the trailer. So one of the two guys who owned the company came into my office, and my job at that time was to assign the writers and producers to the movies, right? Essentially run the writer producer department. So you'd get movies in, you'd go, oh, Yvonne is so good with, dramas. Here's a drama. Warner sent us, Yvonne, write this one, right? So Jeff comes in my office. And by the way, he always calls me Stevie. He's like, Stevie, so Bart. And I was like, Bart, the guy in the vault who delivers tapes around Hollywood, Bart the runner. He's, yeah. I was like, yeah, what about Bart? He goes, have you ever given Bart a movie to write a trailer? I was like, I might be misunderstanding. What do you like, Bart, the guy who drives the tapes around? He goes, yeah, I just have a sense of, I got a thing about him. You should give him something. And I was like, you are the boss. You also been doing this for 20 years. Like, I'm 19, 20 years old. You're really good at this. You got it. So call Bart in, ask his boss if we're in the vault. Can I borrow Bart for a moment? Bart comes in, and I picked a title that had like a long due date. Like we had a month to work on it, right? So if he worked on it for a week, he's like, Steven, I don't know what I'm doing. I could always give it to a pro, call Yvonne, go, hey, save this thing, right? So I give this title to him. I sort of give him some similar trailers, like just, here are like 3 trailers we've done in the past year. They're very similar kinds of movies, same kind of thing, right? So he goes off. 2 days later, Jeff comes to my office. So how's Bart doing? I'm like, dude, I haven't bugged him. This is his first trailer. He's had it for 48 hours. Like, I'll ask him on Monday how he's doing. Jeff's like, okay, fair enough. That's good. So what else did you give him? I was like, Jeff, he's never written a trailer before in his life. I gave him one thing. I don't want to stress him out. And Jeff goes, Stevie, it's always about the other thing. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, listen, let me explain you how creativity works. He's like, if you give Bart one movie to focus on, he's going to focus on that, and beads of sweat are going to come down his temples. And you never have the great idea about the thing you're looking at. You have to give him another movie. So when he's thinking about that one, the back of his mind is free to have that weird, great idea on the thing that he thinks he's not thinking about, but his real creative mind is. He's like, trust me on this one, give him another one, right? I'm going to tell you, that was over 20 years ago. I have seen what Jeff said true time and time again with film writers, with costumers, with directors, it is astounding the way that is true, that it's that weird part of your brain, when it's set loose, it does I don't know, chocolate and peanut butter. Let's put those together. Wouldn't that be cool? And there's actually a great book called The Net and the Butterfly by Olivia Fox that talks about the neuroscience behind this, about the executive mode and the default mode networks. And it's why so many people, if you ask people who've created things, like a friend of mine created Siri, another friend created, Bing, the search engine. If you ask them, like, how did you come up with this? When did you come up with this? It's often, I was driving, while I was washing the dishes, while I was showering, because there's a part of you that's busy with the other thing. So you can have the weird idea about what your unconscious mind, your creative mind wants to do. And that was a huge lesson for me in terms of how to manage creativity, is you always have to have the other thing, or else you just come up with garbage. Like when I was trying to think about a name for my company, and I was just coming up with awful productivity focus mate 14. Terrible, right? So anyway, just
I totally relate to this discussion about creativity. But Stephen, I don't know if back in the days where you were working in the corporate world,
hmm?
then you have these famous brainstorming sessions between 20 people.
Oh my God.
You invite the agency. There is a stress. You have 4 hours to come up with a bloody idea, but
Right?
nothing comes because the level of stress, pressure, and the methodology of just
Yes.
doing shit around to each other is
Yes.
inefficient. Right?
Yes.
And
It's inefficient.
let's
And
do it.
I'll tell you something that I saw, and I'm going to name drop just for one moment because this is how powerful this was for me. Is one of the I'm not going to say the biggest problem. One of the biggest problems with that like, group brainstorm, we're all going to get in there and talk. The biggest problem is that you are afraid whether your idea is good.
Mm.
And when you were sitting there with 12 colleagues and you want to say the thing of like, well, what if the chocolate had peanut butter on the inside or something, and you're just like, maybe it's the stupidest idea ever. If you cannot in your team give them the safe space to say stupid shit, because some of it will be stupid, right? If
Yeah.
you can give the space to do that and you all like sort of laugh and move on, but you came up with the one idea, which became, Reese's Pieces or whatever, right? Reese's peanut butter cups. You basically cannot do that. You can't have a group brainstorm. And I'll tell you, I saw this in action when I was at DreamWorks, which, God bless, one of these studios run by a filmmaker, where there was definitely an impetus every day. Can you make your movie a little bit better today, as opposed to can you make it a little cheaper today? Can you can you get the deals done in a different way? Like there was definitely an impetus of like, can you go home tonight and make this 1% better, right? And I'll tell you, being in meetings with Steven Spielberg, who's obviously recognized for everything that he has done, he could say something that was like, okay, you know what the alien needs to do? It needs to, come through this wall and do the thing, blah, blah, blah. You're there with a couple of writers. He's giving notes to Stacy, the chairman of the studio, producers and anything there. And everyone's just like, okay, Steven wants the alien to come through the wall. I'm telling you, if the coffee boy came through the room and he's like, actually, the alien should be like missed and should come in through the vents, and it was a better idea, there was no weird. Steven would literally go, oh, yeah, that's better. Let's do that. And it wasn't like the coffee boy contradicted Steven Spielberg. Oh my God, he's going to be fired and killed. It was more like Steven was just like, hey man, best idea should win. Like that's a good idea. We should do that. And there was no weirdness. There was no like, oh, it was just, okay, keep moving. And if you can't create that culture where your Steven Spielberg can say something and someone else goes, that's actually not as good as this idea. Let's do this. Then you're never going to have a creative brainstorm. You're just going to have performance art and people trying to sound smart. Yeah, which I've done, by the way. And I try not to do, but it happens. Yeah.
That happens. Listen, I have the impression that we have gone through different sorts of strategies, and most of them are like we have heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
We have read that book about it, how to
Yeah.
implement it. But the problem is that in our brain, we go into the flow of life and we forget about how to actually make it happen. It's not because knowledge is not going to help you change or reach your Sukha or not.
Yeah.
So we need like a system, a way, a process, a mental process, or an external trigger that can remind us about how to do things that we have, where that we
Yeah.
have intentions to do. Because again, intentions is also something a little bit fluffy because I might be motivated to reach something, but I don't do shit about it
Yeah.
because lack of time or procrastination.
Let's talk about that for a moment. So, one of the aspects that we built in our platform is community. And I'll tell you what's interesting is I was talking to a member of our community. And again, I was told you, I like talking to people, telling them what we're doing. And I said, how do you like the community feature? Because when you're working, you have the option of turning on your camera. There's a theory called social facilitation theory, which is there is a measurable productivity bump when you can see other people working
Mm.
and they can see you. You can be seen, right?
Uh,
It's why in college, I don't know if you ever went to a study hall, like you could study in your room, but a lot of people go to the library to study and you don't
I
talk to
did.
everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to the study hall and you sit there and you work, but you're working and you look up, you see like 30 of your friends around the huge library, also working. Or, people go to co-working spaces, things like coffee shops. Like there's a famous coffee shop in West Hollywood where a lot of writers go, right? It's this coffee bean. It's on Sunset and Fairfax, right across from the Directors Guild. And you walk in there, everyone's on their little MacBooks, writing their little scripts. And in the corner, there's like the old guy who's like 4 or 5 produced studio movies. He's written like $1 billion movies, but this is his habit from when he was 20 of coming here to this coffee shop and writing at his favorite table. And there are 2 guys, sitting on the other side who just got off the bus and they're, writing their first TV pilot kind of thing. But it was a feeling of being in a clubhouse where everyone there is trying to write something great, right? So I was talking to this member of our community. I was like, so I'm building this thing, this like coffee shop feature, I call it. where you can see each other, or even you can just chat with each other. You don't even have to have your camera on, but have your little avatar, and you can talk to people in the community, because our whole community are basically pretty nice people. They're people who are focused on doing something with their life. So you don't have a lot of weirdos. It's just a nice place to go. So I said, what do you think about this? And she said this. She said, so how Nike sells you a pair of shoes, right? I can go down to the store, buy a left shoe, a right shoe. I can put it on my feet. I can go for a run on my own. She said, do you know 100 million people belong to the Nike Run Club? And the reason for that is when you're part of a community that runs, you run faster, you run further, you're more accountable. The days you don't have the energy, someone's there to support you and go, Yvonne, come on, man, let's do this. Stay with me, right? And the days someone else doesn't, you support them. And she said, that's powerful, because that helps me every day come and be part of this community. Is I'm holding someone else up, or I'm getting the energy to do my own work. And community, I think, is a huge, huge part of this. But this being creating good habits.
Stephen, how can people or even companies try your app? Is there a possibility to download it and just go for it?
It's a website. It's an easy website. You don't have to download anything. You just go to the Sukha Company, which is the Sukha.co. So the Sukha Company. You try it for free for a couple of days. See if it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, great. But I'll tell you this: the people who do sign up and start paying, we have 96% month-over-month retention. Like if you find this and it works for you, you'll be a member forever, which I'm very proud of, because we were not there. We were like at 50% a year and a half ago. And I think a large part of it is we just every day try and make it 1% better. It's what I saw at DreamWorks. Just what can you do today to make it a little bit better? Listen to one more person and try and like sand one more corner or build one more little thing.
I guess what makes this app interesting is that you have a bunch of tools that you can pick and say, I will do this one, right?
Yep. That's exactly
Choice,
right.
again, choice is wonderful, because if something doesn't work for me, or I hate, I don't know, maybe you have put music that doesn't relate to me and I love hard metal, Rammstein
Yeah.
stories.
Ivan, that's exactly right. The way I built it, it looks like little cards that you can flip over if you want to interact with them. And if you're not interested, you just flip it over. And it's just like sort of like it's transparent. So it's just very easy to say, all I want today is I want to see my task list and I want to hear music. And you can hook up your Spotify, by the way, if you want to hear your own, music. If you're like, I hate all of Steven's music. You can hook up your Spotify. You have to have Spotify Premium. You have to actually pay for Spotify to allow you to stream it elsewhere. But if you have Spotify Premium, hook it up, listen to your own playlist with all your mumble rap, hard metal, whatever you want to do. Just go.
Listen, I'm going to try this app. I'm going to try it. And I
Come
promise you
join
that
us.
after this call, I do it.
Yeah.
Now, so I guess that the best way to reach you out if somebody has questions, wants to just have a chit chat about all the wonderful approaches in order to get more focus,
Yep.
being more productive, is going to your website, the Sukha SD, no, so D, Sukha, SUKHA.co. That's number one. And if you want to try the app, that's the place, right?
They can do that. And honestly, it's not even if someone doesn't want to try the app, but they want to ask me about something we talked about, my email address is very public and I'm here to help. So if someone wants to, my email address is simply Steven@thesukha.co. Reach out. If you have a question like, hey man, where can I get that book you talked about? Or what's that reference of the study you made about this? I'm happy. Like, let's live in a world where you actually find happiness through what you do.
Indeed. Indeed. That's worthwhile life. And
Yeah.
then I'm going to put your LinkedIn profile because, yeah, so that people can reach you
Yeah.
out. Because
What did he do? What did that crazy guy that was on last week? It
exactly, exactly. Stephen, it was wonderful to have a chat.
was so
And you
fun. Thank
woke
you for
me
having
up.
me.
You woke me up. I was so down before.
You had a long day. See, it's earlier in my day than it is for you. So I'm glad you have a fun note. When you go to sleep tonight, you'll be like, oh, what a crazy day I had.
Indeed. Thank you very much for your time. It was wonderful to have you here in the Growth Hacking Culture podcast.
Thank you for having me. Okay.